John, great to see you. Of all the things that jumped out to me, it was President Trump talking about that 10% tariff is the floor. And the floor applied to most imported goods from the United Kingdom. And will that be kind of the basis of all these other deals? Because a critical part of what he's doing, reshoring, onshoring manufacturing, and also bringing in tariff revenue. That is important to him.
That's right. Look, the 10% is basically the friends and family rate. It is the best deal you're going to get to be able to sell stuff into the United States market. We're giving that first to the UK because they were able to make a deal first. Other countries are not going to get a better deal than that. And in particular, I think the Trump administration made it very clear to the British government that that the 10% is not really negotiable. We are giving them a break on steel and aluminum and on the airplane parts from, Rolls-Royce, like airplane engines that go into stuff that Boeing makes. But other than that, it's going to be a 10% tariff. Now, that on some things like autos, that's actually a much better deal than they had. But on other things, it'll be a tariff hike. They are going to not be able to bring that down. And I think the rest of the world is going to come around to the view that, okay, look, the United States now just has a 10% entrance fee. It's almost like a cover charge to get into our markets.
Right. Best customers in the world, as Trump might say. Go ahead.
The markets also reacted very favorably when the president started speaking very favorably, actually, in his optimism about China and what that might look like, and the idea that, hey, we're going to actually have face-to-face discussions here in the next short while. Markets seem to really like that as well.
Yeah, look, one of the things that when Trump first announced the tariffs, there was a lot of really panicky talk about how the rest of the world was going to be so angry that they wouldn't do any deal, that they were all going to do separate deals with each other, that the U.S. would be excluded. And that's not happening. In fact, Donald Trump was right all along when he said everybody wants access to the U.S. market. We can charge a universal 10% tariff. We can bring people to the negotiating table by threatening even higher tariffs, and they will come along. I think China is going to be a hard place to make a deal. We cut deals with them back in the first Trump administration, and they reneged on every single part of what they promised to do. So I hope that when Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, go over to, I guess they're doing it in Switzerland, to have a meeting with China, that they go in fully aware with almost a Reagan doctrine, right? Trust but verify. We are not going to let China do what they did to us last time again, which is make lots of promises but not follow through on anything.
And the New York Post is reporting that the president is at least looking at cutting the tariff, the 145% tariff now charged on China, back down to 50 to potentially 54% as part of this thawing of negotiations. We'll see if that happens. But President Trump also, based on sources telling Fox, is pushing Speaker Johnson on potentially raising taxes for the highest income earners. This went down yesterday in a call that it would be considering a tax hike on Americans making $2.5 million or more per year. To me, this is unthinkable if you think about Art Laffer saying this is disastrous. This is the science. This is the math throughout history that you raise taxes on the rich, you're going to get less revenue, slower growth, and you're going to hurt the poor. Why do it then, John?
My big concern here is actually with small businesses. Very few individuals actually take home a salary or wages that are, $2.5 million or more. That's really, the biggest investment bankers, some of the biggest lawyers, movie stars, sports stars. Very few people really earn that much, but small businesses do, and they are a major source of employment. So if Donald Trump does something like this, I think he should pay attention to the impact it would have on small businesses. A successful small business is usually a pass-through entity that gets taxed at the individual rate. This would be a much higher rate than corporations pay. we shouldn't be forcing these small pass-through businesses to become corporations, and we shouldn't be taxing them a lot more than corporate taxes are the rate we charge corporations. So if they do this, at the very least, they should make sure that they carve out small businesses so that it doesn't apply to them.
How about not do it at all? John, by the way, thank you so much, John